Our top story this evening is the ongoing cyber attack against the United States and against America. We've learned today that the attackers used a number of entry points and methods of entry beyond the software updates that were pushed to clients, for example, of Texas-based company SolarWinds. In a statement, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency says this, quote, "It is likely the adversary, not the enemy, the adversary, mind you, has additional initial access vectors and tactics, techniques, and procedures that have not yet been discovered." Can you imagine an agency responsible for the security of this country, its cybersecurity and infrastructure, could put out a lame message like they just did? Imagine at Pearl Harbor, suddenly the intelligence agencies of the United States saying this is going to be a very difficult war to deal with. We're just going to have to figure out what's going on. This is outrageous what we are watching in the way of a response from the federal government. The cyber attack has left very little confidence among citizens that we as a nation are in control of our own networks, have knowledge of what is happening on our internet, which is undoubtedly the battlefield not of the future, but of the present. President Trump hasn't been seen in public since last Saturday's Army-Navy football game. He hasn't tweeted about this attack, nor has he sent out any statement. His deputy press secretary, Brian Morgenstern, today offered this response to a question about how the United States plans to retaliate.
President Trump has made clear, well, I'll reiterate sort of what I had said earlier, which is that the federal government has stood up interagency groups. There are incident response teams. Some of the lead agencies include the FBI, DHS, ODNI, and the NSA. Ambassador O'Brien, the National Security Advisor, is convening meetings daily, if not more than once a day, and he has been in the Situation Room working with the experts across our government to mitigate the effects of any incident and to make sure that our country is secure going forward. And we will not forecast any kind of action that we may take to combat our adversaries and sort of tip them off, so we wouldn't have any comment on that.
That is what you call pure balderdash. They don't know what's happened. They have very little idea of what to do, apparently. And they're putting out lame statements, whether it's from the Energy Department or from the White House press office, that will satisfy no one. Acting Defense Secretary Chris Miller today met with the president at about 3:30 this afternoon. Absolutely nothing has been divulged about what the two discussed. Congress is also taking up the cyber attack against the United States, and some members are comparing the attack to a declaration of war. Fox News correspondent Mark Meredith is in Washington and has much more for us. Mark?
Lou, good evening. Lawmakers have plenty of questions, also plenty of outrage, though, over this cyber attack, showing how vulnerable American computer systems are. As you've been mentioning, so many questions, though, still left to be answered. Earlier this week, lawmakers started to receive briefings from top officials about what has been going on behind the scenes, but they have also said there's still a lot they don't know. As you mentioned, Illinois Senator Dick Durbin saying this is essentially a virtual declaration of war by Russia. We've also heard from Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, also in the Intelligence Committee, saying that this is a major concern. We're also hearing tonight from Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine. She put out a statement about all of this, kind of getting to the point. I thought it was interesting. She goes, this cyber attack likely perpetrated by the Russians spotlights the glaring vulnerabilities of our federal cybersecurity system. The president should immediately sign the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, not only to keep our military strong, but also because it contains significant cybersecurity provisions that would help thwart future attacks, that emphasis on future attacks. The chairman of the Democratic House Armed Armed Services Committee says the SolarWinds cyber operation bears every hallmark of a sophisticated nation-state activity that could undermine our national security, and it is imperative that Congress move forward with oversight to understand the impacts and root causes of this campaign. So we're hearing that from lawmakers, not only demanding to know more information, but also want to know what else can be done, Lou, to stop this. You mentioned that we have not heard from President Trump on camera or on Twitter about this cyber attack. There's been a lot of questions about whether or not he would weigh in or not. You heard from the White House spokesperson. But these questions, Lou, you can bet are not going to go away as lawmakers not only want to know what else is vulnerable, but is there another attack coming? Lou.
Do you think, Mark, the lawmakers, you mentioned Susan Collins, others, have any understanding that this is an ongoing attack? It isn't something where you sit around and twiddle your thumbs and you talk about the possibilities philosophically of 6 months, a year from now. This is an ongoing existential threat to the United States. And we have elected officials and officials of this government acting as though, I don't know. I'm stunned by the fact they're not being transparent and reporting to the American people who have a right to know the dimensions and the proportions and the energy of this highly kinetic attack on the United States. It may be cyber, but make no mistake, this is war on the United States by an enemy. How does that escape our elected officials? That's a rhetorical question, Mark. My question is,
Lou, I was going to say the one factor in all of this.
Let me finish, Mark, just for a second, then please, have we received any information about our forces being put on high alert? Have we had any indication of any kind from any source that this government has moved to respond, to react?
Well, you're asking about what's kind of happening behind the scenes, but there's a big X factor in all of this and why you're not hearing from lawmakers more often, why you don't see people like me going up with their phones, basically chasing people in the hallways, and that is because of the pandemic. Right now, there are just fewer people around Washington and those institutions, so many other people working remote. So maybe you're not hearing from people directly as that. But the other factor in all this, Lou, you got the government facing another potential shutdown at midnight tonight. You've got the stimulus talks for the coronavirus as well as the vaccine being rolled out. Of course, this is important, but you imagine how many different priorities also are being juggled here. So trying to keep the eye on one ball, not easy. But as you mentioned, Lou, a lot of lawmakers starting to speak up, realizing just how bad this attack is. Lou?
Mark, thank you very much. An excellent job of reporting. And as I said, it has all the earmarks of being an existential attack. Even in the midst of all of the challenges and threats this nation faces now and this president faces, it is certainly without question the first order of business for our politics.